Ani made another fantastic breakfast, and what fun to sit around with the guys and have coffee and then good food and just conversation that always focuses on three things: family, faith, and fishing. Once we filled our bellies, it was time to mount up, and it was time to put together the crazy caravan. We had a special river we were going to try to find. It was going to take us a while to get there, but if we reached our destination, it'd be worth it. Hey, we're guys, can you tell? Yeah, we like to get muddy. We don't mind getting dirty. We know it's going to wash off. Part of the Alaskan adventure is traveling through the bush. And you'll notice there's no highway signs, there's nothing there but a basic trail, rivers, rocks, streams. You have no idea what's around the next bend. You don't know if your vehicles are going to last. You don't know if you're going to blow a tire or not. But that's part of the excitement, just being in Alaska. There are no bridges where we're going. So to get across a river, we literally just have to pick a spot and drive straight across. We were all pretty fortunate to make it. What a great place. This is an unnamed river. We are beyond the middle of nowhere. The trip out was worth the price of admission alone. I've never been on rougher roads, muddier roads, and obviously it's not even a real road. But we just came blasting through the woods and ended up at this gorgeous spot. Got turned around a couple times. I'm admitting it, we did. A lot of bugs, as you can see, but tremendous grayling fishing right here and a few rainbows as well.
So how was the trip in? It was beautiful, but the back seat of the truck was not the place to be. We did a lot of river fording, a lot of mud. My son Austin did a great job. We followed my son Ryan for a while. Those guys were having fun. Kristen and John had a good time. We got mud everywhere, as you can see. And this was inside the cab. I was getting mud on myself, and I believe Reid, the cameraman, was having a wonderful time. He kept shooting and shooting and shooting, and we're right here on the Middle Fork.
Are you going to do any fishing today?
I'm going to do some fishing. I just have to lay down, and it's amazing how good the solid earth feels after you've been riding around getting a little bit of car sick. So
is a great little run here. You got two little streams coming together. So any feed, any bugs or anything like that that fall in, they're going to hit the water and they'll flow with the strongest current. So you've got a bunch of grayling that are laying right up in here. And I've caught about 5 with 5 casts. So that's a pretty good spot. This is a pretty good spot. We are thankful for fish of any size. So I'm gonna let this guy go. This is all catch and release. We're not hungry. We don't need to fish right now. We just love the adventure. We love the excitement of catching them. We respect the fish. We want them to go back and grow, reproduce. So we're gonna release them. Gorgeous. And there he goes. He's good as new. About bears.
Bear poop?
Yep. They do that in the woods. You know, I love any kind of fishing, but fly fishing is my favorite method. I learned at age 7, many years ago, from my grandfather. He was my hero, and I still remember the day I caught my first trout in a northern Michigan stream on a fly. I don't know that I've ever been prouder just to see my hero, my grandfather, smiling at me and hand on the shoulder and just hearing him say, "Good job, son, good job." So when I'm in a stream, whether it's in northern Michigan or it's in Colorado or in the wilds of Alaska, I always like to think about Grandpa Henry, the times we had together fishing, the times we had together talking. He was my hero. He was my hero. He was the guy that gave me the love for the outdoors. I sure do miss him. Well, you got everything you need in there.
I liked Phil Swires from the minute I met him. He loves the outdoors, he loves the next generation, and he's always prepared for anything. He knows Alaska's beautiful, but if you're not ready for anything, it can kill you. He's the kind of guy I like to have around in a dangerous place.
Oh yeah, they're great, fantastic. I had one that came out of the water to land on top of it. Just didn't do that.
Oh yeah.
Up and landed on the bottom.
That's why they're so fantastic.
Yeah.
They're about the only fish I know that does that.
Yeah.
You can get a great view of them.
Yeah, that was amazing.
Yeah.
Guys, I want to talk about a really neat subject. I believe it's a virtue for men, and it's called adventure. We're made for adventure. We absolutely are made for adventure. And I think sometimes we get living a life that's a little too steady, it's just a little too predictable, but we're made for adventure. I think about the Apostle Paul. Now, this is a guy of great privilege, of great learning, and yet he had some amazing adventures. I want to read you a little bit about this. This is pretty cool. It's over here in the book of 2 Corinthians. He says this. He's talking to the Corinthians. There's some things going on here, but I just love to read about his life. He says, I've worked much harder, been in prison more frequently. This is a guy's life, right? Been flogged more severely. That means he got hit with whips. I've been exposed to death again and again. 5 times I received from the Jews the 40 lashes minus 1. That's being whipped with this whip of cords. And it was rumored that if you were hit with it 40 times, it would kill you. And they always stopped at 39. Isn't that interesting? Can you imagine being whipped so severely that they believe one more time will kill you? He was whipped that way 5 times. This is real. This is a real guy this happened to. Paul. Wow. What else went on? 3 times I was beaten with rods. I was once stoned. 3 times I was shipwrecked. I spent a night and a day in the open sea. I've been constantly on the move. I've been in danger from rivers, in danger from bandits, in danger from my own countrymen, in dangers from Gentiles, in danger in the city, in danger in the country, in danger at sea, in danger from false brothers. I have labored and toiled. I have often gone without sleep. I've known hunger and thirst, and I've gone without food. I've been cold and naked. Besides everything else, I face daily the pressures of my concern for all of the churches. Picture this guy's life. What a dude. The Apostle Paul, this man of privilege. He could have just chilled through life. He could have received the Lord, I suppose, and just said, well, everybody relax. Let me just get through this thing. And yet, man, what a life of adventure the guy had. Pretty amazing. Some other people, I did some research, some other people that lived lives of adventure. Neil Armstrong. First guy to walk on the moon. 1969, he said, 1 small step for man, 1 giant leap for mankind. The guy walked on the moon. You talk about adventure. Marco Polo. Now, Marco Polo is not just a game that kids play in a swimming pool, right? He was a real explorer. He explored Asia. He was the first European to meet Kublai Khan. What an amazing guy. Lewis and Clark. Here we are in some of it must be unexplored territory in Alaska. Well, Lewis and Clark, man, there weren't roads, there was no super highway coming west. These guys explored. A beautiful Indian woman named Sacagawea was part of their guide, part of their party. What adventure these guys had. Sir Edmund Hillary, loved this guy. He was the first one to reach the summit of Mount Everest. He was a New Zealander. He did many other things. He reached the North Pole and the South Pole And we believe he was the first man ever to do all three of those things. What a guy. You know, adventures involve motion. It's pretty hard to have an adventure sitting still.
I actually believe that every one of us, if we pretend to be godly people, are called to live a life of adventure. Obeying God, following Him, means an adventurous approach to life. And I see about 3 elements in the life of adventure that are worth noting. 1, the life of adventure is never safe. Now, in God's hands, we couldn't be in a safer place, but that's no guarantee that, our life will be preserved. Our eternal life will be preserved, and that's the only thing that's important. Another is that God always prepares us. Whenever He's going to send us on an assignment, He doesn't send us out just cold out of the closet. He gets us ready. The third element that's really important in adventure is there's always the potential for loss. We have to be ready to give up, life, limb, our life savings, whatever. We are actually to live our life as a living sacrifice, not keep it for ourselves, but give it up for the Lord. And that's the adventure. Throwing caution aside, and I don't mean wisdom, and I don't mean doing things appropriately. I don't mean forget wearing a life jacket or tying onto a climbing rope, but do the right and appropriate things, but then dive in as long as we know that God is putting us on assignment, and come what may, we're going to go for it because we're trusting God. The last thing is, it's a life of trust, not in ourselves, but of trusting God.
I'm deeply concerned that men of God, especially young men these days, are finding their adventure at the end of their thumbs. Video games and television have taken over adventure, and the mind doesn't really know the difference, but your soul and your spirit do. I'm not against video games. I'm not throw them all away, but I'm telling you this, you're made for real adventure. Catching a fish, riding a four-wheeler down the side of a mountain where you're not sure if you're going to make it or not. Facing cold, facing the elements, putting your test of skill against a fish, a grayling, a lake trout, a salmon. Going on a missions trip in a third world country where you're not sure how things are going to work out. These are forms of adventure, guys. We've got to embrace this life, because I'm telling you right now, you can go from playing the video games to just watching TV and movies and being on our smart dumb phones, and we can live life about 6 to 12 inches away from our face, and years will go by and years will go by, and someday you will stop and realize that you have spent way too much time in a world of fantasy and make-believe and pixels and cyberspace. And God created this amazing world just for you to have adventures in. Just for you to have adventures in. I am so thrilled that I get to have some adventures with friends and family. This time in Alaska has been phenomenal. Old friends, new friends, being pushed to some limits, feeling cold that I haven't felt for a while. Getting up and being a little stiff from sleeping in a tent. These are good adventures. These are good adventures. Being taken to the edge on many occasions. These are good things. Being in Puerto Rico with my daughter, doing ministry. Jumping off 4-story cliffs into small pools of water. Does that make sense to do? Absolutely. Absolutely. Why? Because we're men. We're made for adventure. Don't waste your life in front of a little phone screen. Don't waste your life building up your thumbs. Build real muscle. Build your legs, your lungs, your endurance. Get out and experience some of the marvelous things that God has created. I've told you before, the Lion King lied. There is no circle of life. You're not coming back for another shot. You get one shot. You get one life. Let's be like the Apostle Paul. Let's live for the kingdom, and in that kingdom living, I assure you there will be time for great adventures. This is why you're created. Be a man of adventure. No regrets.
So I'm a police officer. I've been a police officer now for about 7 years, 3 years on SWAT and a couple other things. But during the course of patrol, we got dispatched to a call, and at the time, myself and some other officers were in the area of a local airport. And this airport's a smaller airport, and it kind of facilitates smaller aircraft. We call them bush planes or just smaller planes. So we get the call saying that a plane had gone down. And this is pretty serious. It doesn't happen all the time, but it happens here and there. So I raced over there, a couple of their officers race over there, and we get there. And you know, the initial, when we get there is we're trying to search where this is at. I look down the runway and I see smoke. So clear indication that that's where it's at. So the front driver was slunched over and the back passenger was kind of hanging out the side of the aircraft. But they were still in their seatbelt and they were unconscious. So we rush up. I start trying to get the rear passenger out while the other officer tries to get the front driver out, pilot out. And the smoke at this point was pretty intense. I happened to grab my fire extinguisher right before I got on my patrol vehicle and handed it to a civilian who was by and told him just to, hey, you know, try to put the fire out the best you can with this. So I start trying to get the rear passenger out, but she's not coming out because she's still seat belted in, and trying to get to the release. Meanwhile, another officer shows up and they're able to get the pilot out of the plane. By now, the smoke is really intense. Now you have the fire extinguisher smoke and it's hard to breathe. And it temporarily put out the fire, but it started to blaze back up. And at that point, I remember feeling the fire, and I started feeling the hairs on my arm start to kind of singe, if you will. And then my patrol uniform was getting super hot to the skin. And I remember thinking in my mind, how long am I going to stand here and try to save this person? It felt like I was thinking about that for a minute. I'm sure it was probably only a couple seconds. But I knew that I had to stay there for that person. Luckily enough, the fire department was close by, and once we pulled her out and were able to do a couple revolutions of CPR, they came and scooped her and went to the hospital. And I share that story because in life, I think we face some trials every day. My brother, he just got diagnosed with leukemia. He's 30. He's got 2 small kids. Everybody has their own trial, whether it's health, whether it's financial, whether it's just unknown about the future. It's tough, and you ask yourself, can I really keep doing this? The beautiful thing of it is that God gives us the strength in that trial, whatever it is. He knows exactly what we need, and we can always depend upon Him. I knew that God would give me the strength to be able to pull that person out of the plane, even though I felt like I couldn't keep going. He gave me the strength. He's going to protect me, and He's going to protect you 100% of the time. So I encourage you to have courage in those times where you feel like all hope is lost, like you don't see any other way. Take a second, know that you have that strength in Christ, and continue to press on, because you'll win in the end.
What a wonderful day. I'm hot, I'm a little tired, a little sore from banging into rocks. Saw a lot of bear sign downstream where we were, but it was exciting. Another great day in Alaska.